Hello, Amy. Heather, David,
Hi,
Hi,
happy
Tony, how are you guys doing?
birthday.
doing all right. How
Happy
you doing?
happy unbirthday.
Thank you. It's coming up. Appreciate it. Appreciate the flexibility here with your guys' schedule. I know it's been a bit chaotic over the past few weeks as far as getting a regular stride here with this. So thanks for joining. Tony, how are you doing?
Hey Eric, nice to meet you. I'm good. How's it going?
Likewise. So I have a hard stop at the bottom of the hour. Let's just jump into this. Tony, sounds like you're new here. I do this every week. It's basically an AMA. Bring your scenarios, your questions as it relates to recruiting, particularly from the perspective of somebody that's pursuing their next opportunity. And I try to answer the questions the best as I can to give you guys some perspective, and hopefully it'll help with you navigating your search and career.
Appreciate it.
For sure. Joey, welcome. Disha. All right. Have a hard stop at the bottom of the hour, so I want to make sure that I'm getting to the meat of the stuff. So, questions. How are things going out there? Anything I can help with? Any scenarios that could benefit from a recruiter's perspective?
I think it's always good to start with a temperature check in this market because I think a lot of folks are having a lot of problems and challenges. I would just love to
Sure.
know if people are seeing an uptick. I mean, the latest jobs report didn't look good. And so I'd imagine it's sort of, same as usual. That's what I've noticed. There seemed to be an uptick late last year, more in openings than in actual hirings from what I know, from what I've observed. But the data, it's hard to get a real sense for what's going on here. The data is far from reliable.
I wholeheartedly agree, and that was my question. And I haven't been on this call in a while, but I can say from my experience, I've had about literally five opportunities just evaporate within several weeks of starting to interview for them. I would have one interview, two interviews, and then nothing, no response, jobs pulled, put on hold. And just to give you, a sense of where I'm coming from, I'm marketing communications in the financial services industry with a heavy tech background. So I tend to be articulating tech initiatives or new product rollouts, just for example. And I've been interviewing in the financial services space for, all of the usual suspects, and also with consulting firms.
Right on. Um, Anybody else have any input in terms of what they've been seeing out there? Any increase in activity after the new year? Um, Increase in activity, callbacks?
I did read today that we've added almost 800 new jobs to the market last month, which is not very encouraging.
I mean,
That was in the New York Times. I don't know if anybody read that
the
today.
problem with the jobs figures is it doesn't count people who are out of the workforce, and you're excluded from the workforce if you've been out of work for more than 6 months. So
Yeah.
even though the hiring in January was abysmal, the unemployment rate went down more so because people were leaving the labor force as they define it. So there's a lot of people who are executives, what they're calling white collar recession, who aren't counted because they've been out of work for more than 6 months. I know many people have been out of work for more than 6 months.
I
Yeah,
have.
I mean, I
yeah.
have an MBA from Kellogg. I went to UC Berkeley undergrad. I've worked at Accenture. I've had a great career. But this is the ugliest. I was looking for work in 2008. I was working for IBM at the time. I got let go. That was the worst it's been until now, and this is worse than that.
I agree.
And I just
Preaching
had,
to the choir. So what do we do, Eric?
I mean, first of all, I think you guys are doing the right thing in terms of finding community and support and networking through the Never Search Alone community. That community has grown quite a bit. I think when I first joined it about just over a year ago, it was like I want to say something like 2 or 3 thousand people, and now it's like, I mean, how many folks are in the Slack group? It's like 7, 8 thousand. It's pretty big.
I don't
So,
know. I fell off with Never Search Alone, but
did you?
I might re-engage. I went in as a mentor and or a moderator rather, and then I joined another group to just be a participant so that I could
Okay.
see from both sides. But uh, you know, I don't want to like come on this call and be negative, but like I've found that I have not been able to get traction with networking.
Hmm.
It's just, it's kind of bad out there. And now I think with this political climate that we're in, I think everybody is hanging on the edge of their seats because they just don't know what to expect.
Yeah. So, I can't boil the ocean in 30 minutes, um, but I can answer questions related to recruiting. I know that, there's a lot of folks that have been struggling for the past year, year and a half. Some folks being out of work for 6, 9, 12 more months than that, right? And so it becomes this question of,
Well,
am I just beating my head against the wall, right? And there's a season for everything right now. And it feels like we're still in winter, oh, literally and figuratively. Um, so what do we do?
Eric, I have a hypothesis. Can I bounce it off of you in terms of the
Sure.
best way to get a job? Actually, they had these one guys who were advertising on YouTube saying, we know how to help executives get a job. I set up an interview with them. This woman out of Bentonville, Arkansas, who was used to be in HR at Walmart, bright young woman, but she was pitching me. Ultimately, she basically solidified my hypothesis, which is what we all know. Applying for jobs is a waste of time. You need to network your way in. But I think you need to network very smart. I think you need to network by making sure you're using every call. Like you said, I was watching another one of your sessions. You talked about asking really smart questions
Yeah.
and being really smart about those calls and really having a clear objective in terms of trying to get to a hiring manager in a group that you could hire you or to a recruiter that's connected to that group. And a lot of these big enterprises, that could be really hard to navigate. So it's a tall order. Just forget about any apps, even if you're just trying to network the right way. And then even then you have to hope the timing works out. There's usually only so many target companies in your market. I'm in New York City and there's a good number of companies there, but it's still not infinite, in terms of the work I'm trying to do
Sure.
in the industries I work in. So if it's not that way in New York, I'm sure it's even lesser in any other market. And then you have to figure out who's actually hiring at that time. But you don't really need to figure that out. You just need to get a sense for what are the companies you want to work for and generally who's not going bankrupt because everyone's going to hire at some point and almost no one's hiring right now. So you just kind of got to time it and plant your seeds and network the right way to get in front of those people that are really the right people who can help you find a job. But that's really hard. And so maybe first of all, validating does that sound right? And second, how do you actually do that?
Yeah. I mean, to your first point, there does seem to be, particularly in tech, just a shortage of opportunities, right? So it's going to be hyper competitive among the folks that are vying for those positions. And so, where I can add some perspective to the group here, and I do this every week, is giving you a sounding board in terms of what a recruiter might think of your LinkedIn profile, your approach, just so you can get into the mindset of what how a recruiter might be thinking, how the process might be working. That way you can navigate it more effectively, right? And so that's my objective here. I don't claim to have all the answers. Networking there's no one way to network, right? I mean, you could just go to the Whole Foods down the street and run into somebody and boom, you're networking and that leads to a job. And that's kind of serendipitous, but I think part of it is like, yeah, there's a methodical way of doing it. And to your point, right? Like you could use LinkedIn to try to make those connections. You can also go to like non-digital stuff. Like you can actually get out there and go meet somebody or people at like like an actual physical networking event and actually carry business cards. I live in Utah and I ski a lot, and I haven't done this. I need to do this, but I meet so many people. You have about 3 to 5 minutes on a lift, depending on the lift. And I meet people that are running 50, $100 million companies, and they're telling me about this or that. I mean, I'm sure there's billionaires that I've sat with on these lifts that are telling me their story, and they want to help, and I need to make business cards. In other words, we all thought business cards are dead. Maybe they're not, right? And so doing things that people aren't normally doing is something to think about. And that's what I really encourage. Because from a recruiter's perspective, I can tell you what people are doing and what they're not doing. And if you're doing the things that people are not doing, you will stand out. People are not writing thank you cards, like handwritten thank you cards. They're not doing it. Everybody talks about doing it and everybody thinks it's a good idea, but the reality is people don't do it, right? And so I can share those things with you to kind of give you some perspective on what people are doing, what people are not doing, and I hope that could help. Tony, not to go off too much track. I hope that touches on your question.
I mean, my question was really simple. What's the objective in networking? I guess it might depend. I think there's two different types of jobs. There's a
Yeah,
corporate job, where you work for big enterprises, probably like Heather and myself. I also do a little more in the marketing, but more on the consulting side.
yeah,
We overlap a bit. I do a lot with MarTech and ad tech, so we actually overlap a bit. Um, or there's working for a smaller enterprise where you basically, at our level, I can just sort of scan here, look, everyone's pretty senior, and you're trying to get in front of a C-suite person to talk yourself into a job so you can maybe have a C-suite level job or right under that. So it's sort of one or the other. I don't know, I know most people work for big corporations at the senior level, but that not necessarily because, I think the entrepreneurs tend to run their own companies and then so I think it depends. Maybe covering both, but I would at least want to know. So if you're trying to get into a big enterprise, and you're networking, generally, how do you navigate that? My assumption is that you're trying to get to a hiring manager or a recruiter that's connected to your group. Because if you don't have an objective in your networking, you're just spinning your wheels. You can be like, yeah, and they'll be like, oh, you see any opening? Sure, I could refer you. And now you just let them off the hook because you got them to do something for you, but it's not productive because most of those job postings are just, as we all know, lead to nowhere. And I've had plenty of people say at
yeah,
Pfizer, at big companies, Novartis, at Microsoft, oh, I'm going to refer you because I have a great network. I went to these great schools, but even that is a dead end. So now I'm like, no, I need to be a lot more pointed and say, how do you get me to the recruiting manager or the hiring manager? Obviously, you can't just ask like that. You got to get to it in a really smart way. But does that even make sense what I'm saying?
yeah. I think what I'm hearing you say is, generally speaking, what is this sort of strategy with networking, and then more specifically, what is the strategy that I would recommend in terms of networking for a specific purpose? For example, getting into an enterprise level company. So to answer, I think that's what you're asking, right, Tony?
Yeah,
Okay. So the first question, in terms of generally speaking, when I think about networking, I think about adding value and being hyper focused about what you stand for. Right. I've
yeah,
talked to a lot of folks, and when they come to me with like not even outside of recruiting, right? Just meeting people on the street or whatever, at the lift, whatever, right? And if I can't understand what they do or how they add value in their business, it doesn't have to be value to me specifically, but how they add value just in general, they've lost me. I don't know.
right.
I don't know what to call them for, right? Like if they do this, this, and this, and that, and then this, I have no idea what to call them for. So chances are most people want to help and they want to be helpful. And if they know what you stand for and they know how you can add value, it doesn't have to be directly to them. But those people that you meet, they know other people, right? And so if you can stand for something very specific and you can add value to them, that's even sort of the cherry on the top. But if you could craft your messaging such that you stand for something and the person, it's very clear with the person that you're talking with, they understand what you stand for, then it'll be easier for them to help you, right?
Yeah,
And then on top of that, if you're able to add direct value to them, that's even more so, right? Because more people do that first level thing. It's like, okay, this is what I stand for, right? And if you have any jobs out there, if you know anybody, blah blah blah, and send them my way or make an introduction. Okay, great. But if you add value directly to them, it doesn't have to be business related. It could be personal too. It could just be something instant, right? Like I'm just using this example of me being on a lift, right? If I tell the guy that or girl that they like chili, it's like, oh, there's a restaurant down here that has the best chili. You need to check it out. It's blah 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 organic, right? And so I'm adding value right there, right? When you add value as part of general networking, then you're more memorable and you lead with value, right? Okay.
Yeah.
This is probably, I'm probably not saying
That's a
anything
good one. I
that,
mean, I'll just elaborate on that a little bit really quick.
yeah,
When I do these network reach outs, I usually say, by the way, I have expertise at the intersection of AI analytics and go to market, which includes marketing, B2B SaaS sales or even customer experience, customer service. And and if you're interested, I have some ideas for you. So at least I'm trying to show that I have something I can bring to the table
yeah,
and I'm not just trying to pick their brain for a job.
yeah,
That's one
for
way I
sure.
address it. And I really do spend a lot of time to learn about those things. I figure if I'm out of work, I can spend half my time training because it doesn't take that much time because there's not that many jobs. So
Yeah. So if there's ways that, and there, I'm not saying there are ways that you can add value. It takes work though, right?
yeah.
So just being hyper focused on what you stand for and how you can add value. That
Mhm.
way the other person knows it, and they might run across
Mhm.
somebody that could directly add value to you, and they can make the introduction. Okay, so that's just
I
generally
really like
speaking.
what you said, though, Eric. Sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I also think, yeah, creating that connection through like food and travel. I come from a foodie family. I'm always like, oh, I've got this great smoothie, or, have you tried, yogurt instead of sour cream? Like, if that comes up in conversation, think about yourself as like a dynamic person and what interests you. And, oftentimes you might be able to find a connection in that way. So the person doesn't feel like you're
yeah.
just trying to like juice
I
them. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
thank you for sharing that, Heather, because I think what I was saying was like make sure the person knows what you stand for. I mean, you can go on and on about your pitch about yourself and your elevator pitch and whatever, but it has to resonate with them, right? So there's this thing I saw the other day, the whole uh sell me a pencil, sell me a pen thing, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And there was this guy that was like, "Oh, you're talking about the benefits or the features of the pencil and this and that." And so in contrast, the other person was like, "Well, the other person just started asking questions about the person." And so I think the second approach in terms of asking questions and getting to know the person and then relating back yourself or your situation or your value add to that person, right? I wouldn't recommend chili to the person on the lift I was sitting next to unless I knew the person was hungry or had some interest in food or
Right.
whatever. I wouldn't just be like, "Oh, you got to check this chili place out." But if the guy told me like, "Oh, I'm starving for lunch and you know any good places around here?" Then I would do it, right? So leading by curiosity and with questions will help you position whatever you say to be more relevant to the person, right? It's like like sales 101, right? And so being 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 somebody that you would want to talk to, like being somebody that's interested and interest when you're interested, you become more interesting, right? And so if you can be interested in people and getting to know them or then it gives you a way to kind of just at the minimum, just have an interesting conversation, right? And and that in and of itself is a beautiful thing. I think too many of us are sitting behind a desk all day, but just having a really interesting, deep, authentic conversation, for me, I love that. I love that, and so
Yeah. And it's no secret that you're looking for a job and there's somebody who might be able to help you. But if you do have a connection to be able to build on that is really nice,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah. And so leading with value, being interested, and then by virtue of being interested, you'll be interesting. And then that way it sets the foundation for a meaningful conversation. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Heather, like connection. That's what networking is, right? It's really connection, right? And not just like a logical connection, but an emotional connection, right? And so to the extent that you can make that emotional connection with people, again, you're doing more than what I see most people doing. Most people do the logical connection, right? They'll ask questions, but it's very logical. It's like, oh, well, what are you interested in? What's your business? And what do you do? And it's not like, well, how did you get started? And how do you really like what you're doing, and what's next for you in this world? So this is next level kind of questions that are a little bit more emotional. They really tune into the heart, right? And that's what people remember. That cliche, right? People don't remember what you said; they remember how you made them feel, right? And so if you can tune into that aspect, again, I'm coming from the perspective of I'll tell you what I see people do, and I'll tell you what people don't do that really leaves an impression I find really effective. People don't tune into the heart. They tune into the logic, they tune into the business side, they tune into the logical side. I'm not saying that's bad, right? I'm not saying that's bad, but you'll set yourself apart if you start tuning into the heart.
It takes practice.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And
I
then
chat
totally,
I chat with people
sorry.
on planes wherever I fly, and I've just done it for years. And I've always liked to have. I just like I'm interested in people, and so I realized that. So when I have these sort of networking things, I realize I'm not bad at it because I've always had an interest. Oh, you have kids, or did you grow up there? Sometimes the simplest little question about their personal life that isn't too intrusive, but still sparks them. If it's a type of person, most people want to talk, most people want to share. It's just human nature, especially if you're
Yeah.
somebody, you're a little vulnerable and you're in a similar field. Maybe you're an alum, maybe you worked with them at some point, or maybe you went to the same school or anything in common. You want to work at that, you have an interest in that company, they work there, you already have something in common right there, or just the fact that you're just working in a corporate field. I mean, there's so many ways to have a
Yeah.
common found somebody.
Everyone is struggling with some sort of fight that you don't see, right? It could be personal, it could be business, it could be whatever. And if you could tune into that, right? And especially if you're dealing with a similar fight, a similar struggle, you got instant connection there. And I'm not just saying that for like that way you can position yourself so that they could be more responsive for an ask. It's just there in and of itself in that conversation, you can get a lot and you can give a lot, and that's
Right.
some that's
Good too. I think that's the
foundation you can
thing.
build on.
If you set yourself up for being, I want to pay it forward, pay it back. I mean, I always think that as long as you have good intentions, people can feel that. Like
Yeah,
I like to help people. I mean,
yeah,
if you don't have the feeling of you really want to help people, you're probably not going to come across that way. So
yeah.
that's another thing you can practice on outside of the job search is just help. I try to be helpful outside of the job search to people.
Debbie, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, hey, hi everyone. I'm Debbie, and I come from the nonprofit social impact space, not tech at all. I think maybe most of you here are from a tech background. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions,
Yeah,
but I know that Never Search Alone tends to be more tech heavy. So for me, I just wanted to share actually a very awkward networking call I had this morning. Not to necessarily present it as, a typical experience, but um, so I had a phone call today with someone that was a grantee of an organization that I worked for about 10 years ago. And with everything going on right now with the social impact space and equity, diversity, and nonprofits, I started off with trying to make that emotional connection with him, basically asking him, setting the stage about what's the threats that are happening right now to the social sector, and just asking him, tell me how you're doing and tell me how your organization is doing, in light of all this. And so I tried to make that emotional connection and show the empathy. But unfortunately, this person, I don't take it personally at all, because we, don't know each other other than some connection from 10 years ago. But he just kind of gave some sort of mumbly response, like, oh, they're holding on, they're just kind of trying to move forward as best they can. And then I gave him my spiel of, what I'm coming from and my objective for the conversation. And pretty much he just had nothing to say. It was one of the most awkward networking calls I've ever had. He really had nothing to say other
I'm
than,
glad it wasn't a date, Debbie.
oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, yeah. And thank goodness it wasn't in person. It was just a phone call. It was not a video meeting. The only tip he could give me was consider becoming a consultant because if nonprofits now are laying off people and unable to hire people, they're still going to need to do the things that they normally do, and maybe that there will be more opportunities for fractional work as a consultant rather than looking to be hired on full time by anyone. But it was like a 5 or 10 minute conversation, and then I made the overtures to wrap it up because it was just getting so painful for me. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I guess sorry to hear that. I mean, I guess not everybody you meet will sort of gel and be able to offer
No,
anything meaningful.
I'm not going to let it discourage me. It's an anomaly. I'll just chalk it up to that. Who knows what
Keep
headspace
going.
he was in.
I've had so many lame conversations with people, but I've had exponentially more positive conversations with people. But sometimes it just happens, like you don't vibe uh, for whatever reason, and sometimes it happens in person, and that's even that's even worse. But
Yeah.
I think it's just part of human communication. I mean, don't you find that, Eric, as a recruiter, like, sometimes conversations just, and especially like you're in a very vulnerable space, like you're looking for work, and, you know, maybe that person is struggling in a way that they can't actually articulate, or they might just be being polite.
Yeah. Yeah, there's excuse me. I mean the art of a conversation is like it really is an art and it's a dance and it's a little give and take and I'm not sure how the conversation might have gotten kicked off or what impressions he might have had, Debbie, but it didn't sound like um it sounded like you were hoping for more from the conversation. And
I
so
um I was hoping for him to participate in the conversation at some
mm,
minimal level. I mean, it was like pulling teeth, honestly. Yeah. Um,
did
I don't
you
know. I don't know.
did you did you lead with I'm I'm Debbie, I'm looking for a job?
No,
I didn't think you were. I just want to confirm that.
no, 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 no.
Okay.
I did not. I
Okay.
don't believe I said anything or framed it in any way to completely turn someone off from the conversation.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's people are people, right? It's the people are predictive to some degree, but they're also maybe unpredictable
yeah,
to a whole other level, right? So
sure, sure. Yeah.
keeps things interesting, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I just it's just a one data point, but yeah, I've had good conversations. I hope to have more conversations in the future that will be at least a
Yeah.
couple degrees better than the one I had today. And
Yeah.
they will be good if they are a couple degrees better.
Yeah. I apologize, you guys. I have to jump. I have a hard stop right now at the bottom of the hour. I appreciate you guys' time and flexibility. I'll do this next week. My birthday's Thursday, so I'm taking the day off. So have a great week and let's chat next week and we could probably go longer next week, all right?
Thanks,
Happy
Eric.
birthday.
See
Thank you
you.
guys. I
Cheers.
really
Bye,
appreciate it.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a good week. Bye.